Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. Today, we're being joined by Susan Mead, author of Don't Go Through Life Naked. Susan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here with you today.
Are you ready to get started?
I am.
All right, let's get to it. Question number 1. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Keep writing. If it's on your heart, the most important thing is to not self-edit, not criticize your own work. Keep writing. Keep writing. And then, can I do 2 pieces?
Sure.
Awesome. Because the next thing is to let others read your book, because the more eyes on your book, the better your words will be. So don't fear that, because that's just the reality. You don't want anybody messing up that pretty little baby you're birthing. But the more eyes on your work, the better it will be.
I love your example, too. It literally, obviously I'm a guy, so I can't say too much about it, but from what I've heard, it's very much, when you have that new book out there, a lot of people do say it's like giving birth to something, because it's something that you care about. You want to see it developed. You want to see it get and taken care of properly. So I've heard that example many times. It's such it's a great example of that.
Oh, and that beautiful baby is, that's what my baby Thanks, Paul.
Well, what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Understanding the choices that are available, especially for a first-time author. You hear you can self-publish. There's so many different ways to self-publish now, whether you go through a vanity publisher or a hybrid publisher, or you simply truly do it all yourself. But, oh, by the way, you hire an editor to do something or Fiverr to do something. It's like, what does that mean? And how do I get traditionally published? That's not even a possibility. Hello, just a chaos from all the questions that when you say the word published, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's such an all-encompassing word, because there are so many factors. You have editing, formatting, book cover creation. There's so many different things that go along with that. So we talked before the show. You mentioned that you have 2 books out. I did want to ask, Did you go through the traditional publishing route, or did you go through the indie route with your books?
I've done a hybrid publisher, self-published, and traditional, because I'm a contributor to a Thomas Nelson devotion. So I have all 3.
Which did you like the best?
Yeah, I loved my first experience, which was with a hybrid publisher. I loved handing them the words, and they took and did a magnificent job with the book cover and the layout and the distribution and all that stuff, because I didn't know how to do that. And taking that on for the very first book would have been overwhelming. I probably would have sold 1 or 2 copies, versus 4,500 copies for the first one, and that's not freebies. Those were books sold for a first-time author. I thought that's pretty good.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that worked well.
There are so many different facets to marketing, Paul. I'm not sure that you can attribute anything to one. But my best advice that I would suggest for everybody is to do the pre-orders. So you're able to spend 3 months sharing the news and getting people to go ahead and order, because when that hits day 1, it's a beautiful thing and helps set you up to hit bestseller on Amazon, and just the benefits are real.
Did you have any complications with that? Because I've talked with several authors, and they did not have the best experience with the pre-orders due to some issues with Amazon or issues with the actual date. Did you encounter any challenges through the pre-order process?
I did not. The one thing that happened was my ebook hit before I was aware of it when I was going through the habit publisher. So it was like, oh, I just start sharing a little bit quicker than I realized. So I think having the calendar ready, knowing what activities you're going to be doing, is such a benefit. And, John Kramer wrote a book, I think 1001 marketing ideas. It might be guerrilla marketing ideas, but it's marketing ideas. And I heard Jack Canfield say he and Mark Victor Hansen went through that one book, and they each had yellow sticky pads, and they wanted to see what we could do with our books. This is the first Chicken Soup for the Soul. And every tactic that was in Kramer's book that they thought would apply to them, they wrote it on a yellow sticky pad and filled a wall. And of 1001, they have about 800. And they committed to doing 5 a day until they hit New York Times bestseller. And 14 months later, they did that. So, we don't have to be constrained by 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 ideas. There are resources out there that have 1001 different ways to market your book, and why not use every resource we can?
Well, and speaking of great books, I would like to ask you, what is your favorite book, and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
My very favorite book in the world is the Bible. I'm a minister. So it's the one that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can't, but he can. So, if words are something that need to get on paper, he helped me get that done. And I think that's comforting.
And for a final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote is Psalm 91:11, for he orders his angels to protect you everywhere you go. And there is just something resounding about that. And Paul, when it hit home, was in 2013, I think it was 2013, in Boston. I happened to be sitting at the grandstands in the marathon when the bomb blew up directly across the street.
Oh.
And that was the first thing that came out of my mouth, is for he orders his angels to protect you everywhere you go. And does that help in the midst of the chaos? Yeah, it definitely does. Is there's something there that just feels right. Just feels right.
Absolutely. Well, Susan, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show today. What is the best way for people to find you online?
The best way is my website, Susan B. Mead, and that B is like Boyd, initial B, SusanBMead.com. I write every Friday, and you can find what I'm doing. You can read my writing, or find where I'm speaking right there.
Well, Susan, I want to thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Paul, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you today.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how you can be featured in our brand new Get Published business book, go to getpublishedpodcast.com.